The world of Forever Winter is not a place of hope. It is a landscape defined by endless warfare, ecological collapse, and the slow disintegration of what was once human. For over 4 decades, a catastrophic conflict has consumed the Earth, an industrial-scale war fought by decaying superpowers, artificial intelligences, and the twisted remnants of humanity. Nations have fallen, cities have turned to ash, and the boundaries between man, machine, and monster have all but vanished. In this brutal, unrelenting winter, survival is a daily struggle, and allegiance is often the price of life itself. This is not merely a post-apocalyptic world, it is an apocalypse still in progress. The Forever Winter is a reality forged in the crucible of desperation, driven by greed, ideology, and the relentless hunger for dwindling resources. The global map has become a theatre of chaos, as 3 primary powers, Eurasia, Europa, and Eruska, wage war across every conceivable front. These factions are not mere governments. They are totalitarian machines of war, obsessed with expansion, vengeance, and technological supremacy. Their conflicts have gone beyond traditional warfare. Each now relies on biomechanical monstrosities, cybernetic infantry, and autonomous drones, tools of destruction that devour the very world they were built to defend. Eurasia is a corporate-dominated juggernaut, its armies filled with cybernetically enhanced soldiers sponsored by conglomerates more powerful than any state. It weaponizes propaganda, biotech, and AI-driven warfare in equal means. Europa, meanwhile, presents itself as a bastion of order and unity, but it is little more than a bureaucratic surveillance state that trades the lives of its citizens for fleeting territorial gain. Eruska, the third great power, is a bizarre and terrifying hybrid, a federation of Slavic nations and parts of Africa that has embraced aggressive bioengineering, creating monstrous units that are as much organism as they are weapon. These 3 titans clash over a dead world, unaware or uncaring that their endless violence has rendered the idea of victory meaningless. In the shadows of these great powers, another force moves, the Scavengers, desperate survivors who live and die between the cracks of the major factions. These are not soldiers or patriots, they are mercenaries, refugees, cultists, bandits, and the truly unlucky. They are the remnants of a shattered human race, forced to navigate battlefields that were never meant to sustain life. For the player, it is through the eyes of a scavenger that the Forever Winter unfolds. There is no safety, no sanctuary, and no true allies. Reputation is a currency, loyalty is a liability. Every mission is a risk, and every bullet counts. The scavenger's life is one of negotiation, opportunism, and, if they're lucky, profit. The factions are not cartoon villains, but deeply developed entities with histories, internal politics, and a unique philosophy of war. The military units they deploy, the commanders who lead them, and the territories they fight over all reflect coherent visions of total war. Game systems, from factional influence and sabotage mechanics to the balance of power map, are not mere background features. They are the very lifeblood of its narrative. Every skirmish, every decision made by the player and the AI factions alike contributes to a dynamic world in flux. This is not a static setting. The war is very much alive. Environmental storytelling plays a critical role in reinforcing the atmosphere. Frozen wastelands, collapsed megacities, burning forests, and shattered fortresses speak volumes about the scale of destruction. This is a world where nature has been wounded, perhaps mortally, and where the weapons of war have outlasted the civilizations that birthed them. Maps like the Ashen Mesa, Frozen Swamp, and Babel serve as frozen monuments to past battles, and as active stages for new ones. The terrain itself becomes a character, scarred, cold, and unwelcoming. Forever Winter is a meditation on the futility of war, the loss of identity in the face of totalitarian systems, the degradation of both human and ecological life. The factions may differ in tactics and aesthetics, but they are unified by their willingness to sacrifice everything in the pursuit of dominance. The Scavengers are no different. Though less powerful, they too are trapped in the cycle, driven by the need to survive, scavenge, and adapt in a world that no longer values human life. In this video, we will explore the lore, history, and major factions of the Forever Winter, as laid out throughout the game and associated lore. In the endless snow and smoke of the Forever Winter, there are no heroes, only survivors. The descent into the Forever Winter did not occur overnight. It was not sparked by a single catastrophic event, but rather through decades of geopolitical tension, economic desperation, and unchecked technological escalation. What began as competition for resources and influence eventually transformed into an all-consuming world war, one that outlived its original actors, devoured entire continents, and reshaped the planet into an unrecognizable battleground. The stage for this endless conflict was set by the fall of diplomacy, the rise of corporate military alliances, and the relentless forward march of military automation. As nations collapsed, ideologies mutated, and humanity itself began to warp. The old world gave way to a new paradigm of ceaseless war and technological monstrosity. The Forever Winter had begun. Prior to the war's eruption, the world was divided among three dominant superpowers: Eurasia, Europa, and Eruska. Each of these power blocks emerged from historical legacies, some ideological, others economical, and each sought dominance over a world rapidly running out of room and resources. Eurasia was an expansive economic and military federation composed of East Asian oceanic states. Its strength lay in biotech, robotics, agriculture, and artificial intelligence. It was not merely a government, but a powerful techno-corporate entity, where private megacorporations like Zakatsu, Zavax, and Hypax held vast influence over policy and warfare. Eurasia's civilization was one of automation and augmentation, with the population increasingly reliant on cybernetics and military conscription through corporate contracts. Europa, meanwhile, was a continental union born from a resurgence of centralized power and surveillance state governance. With a long legacy of empire and a brutal but effective bureaucratic machine, Europa portrayed itself as a stabilizing force, a guardian of civilization. In truth, it was paranoid, highly stratified, plagued by internal contradictions. Its massive territory was poorly resourced, leading to overextension and desperation. Yet its grip on information and its industrial military capacity made it one of the most formidable powers on Earth. Eruska was a newer and stranger entity, a federation born of former Slavic nations and African states, ruined by economic collapse and social disintegration. Eruska embraced a radical path. Instead of relying purely on machines or doctrine, it pursued grotesque biological experimentation, merging man and monster to fuel its armies. Its leaders, real or artificial, were almost mythic in their obscurity. To the other powers, Eruska was something alien, unpredictable, and dangerous. These three blocks did not coexist peacefully. Each vied for supremacy over dwindling resources: fossil fuels, clean water, arable land, data infrastructure, and as diplomatic tools failed, and espionage increased, conflict became inevitable. The opening salvo of the Forever Winter was apocalyptic. In a single, horrifying exchange, Eurasia and Europa launched intercontinental nuclear strikes. Eurasian orbital and cybernetic warfare units targeted and disabled Europa's satellite network, plunging their infrastructure and communications into chaos. In response, Europa launched retaliatory missile strikes, wiping out Eurasia's major metropolitan centers, data networks, and population hubs. But this was not the end. It was a beginning. The scale of destruction was immense, but neither side was entirely crippled. Instead, the survivors, governments, corporations, AI-controlled military nodes, regrouped and escalated. Cities fell into martial law, civilian casualties numbered in the millions. Environmental collapse accelerated as smoke, chemical pollutants, and orbital debris blocked out the sun in key regions. Agricultural zones turned to wastelands. With each passing year, the war expanded across borders, continents, and oceans. There was no return to peace. There was only advance, retreat, and rearmament. In the power vacuum left behind by obliterated nation-states, military-industrial complexes gained absolute control. Driven by automated decision-making systems, propaganda loops, and insatiable production lines, giant walking fortresses, biomechanical superweapons, and swarms of AI-controlled drones became common features of the battlefield. The idea of a front line lost meaning. Everywhere became contested territory. The war did not remain isolated between Eurasia and Europa. Eruska, seeking opportunity in the chaos, launched its own campaigns to seize resource-rich zones in the ruined continents. Africa, already drawn into Eruska's union, became a crucial rear-line provider of resources and conscripts. Asia turned into a burning chessboard, with cities changing hands constantly, and no faction able to hold territory for long. Even North America was not spared. The Pacific coast, once home to the US supercities, fell into chaos. One of the last megacities, Los Angeles, became a flashpoint, ravaged by Eurasian and European forces alike. Its ruins now serve as one of the game's battlegrounds, a symbol of just how far the war has spread. As decades passed, the factions entrenched themselves, not to win, but to survive. They fortified front lines, mined territories, and deployed increasingly inhuman tactics. Civilians became resources, either as soldiers, test subjects, or organ donors. Information warfare, psychological operations, and cybernetic conditioning became normalized. The great factions became more akin to ecosystems than nations, constantly adapting, growing more alien, and devouring everything in reach. Beyond the immediate military consequences, the war devastated Earth's ecology. Nuclear fallout, chemical runoff, drone swarm deforestation, and terraforming experiments by Eruska have rendered many regions uninhabitable. Winters grew longer, crops failed, and entire regions are now permafrost tombs, littered with wreckage and corpses. The biosphere had been wounded beyond repair. The human cost is even harder to calculate. Mass famine, genocide, refugee populations turned to slave labor. The majority of humanity now lives under military occupation, corporate bondage, or as unaffiliated scavengers, surviving on the margins of civilization. From the maelstrom emerged the Scavengers, survivors too small to count, too independent to be assimilated. These are not organized nations, but individuals and rogue groups who navigate the ruins, looting war zones, forming temporary alliances, and trying to outlast the inevitable. They are not neutral, they are opportunists. They must choose whether to align with factions, sabotage them, or to simply survive. For many, life is reduced to scavenging tech, selling intel, and avoiding the attention of drones and patrols. It is this experience, the Scavengers' perspective, that the player inhabits in the forever winter. These Scavengers exist in a liminal space. They are not part of the war, yet the war is all around them. They interact with the major factions through a delicate and dangerous reputation system. Their actions can shift the balance of power, toppling bridges, hijacking supply lines, or triggering full-scale engagements. Yet their power is always relative. One wrong move, and a walking fortress might flatten their hideout. One betrayal, and all factions may turn on them. What sets the Forever Winter apart from traditional war narratives is its refusal to provide a resolution. The war has no end, no ultimate goal, and no clear victory conditions. Each faction fights not to win, but to avoid irrelevance. Even the player, powerful as they become, is a footnote in a broader war machine that stretches far beyond their reach. It is a grim reflection of humanity's worst impulses: technological hubris, endless escalation, and the hollow pursuit of power. There is no peace on the horizon, only frostbitten skies, shattered cities, and the slow crawl of metal across blood-soaked snow. This is the world the factions have made. This is the Forever Winter. Eurasia stands as one of the three major factions embroiled in the unending conflict of the Forever Winter. A technologically advanced dystopian power, Eurasia is notable for its unique composition of military forces, which primarily consist of conscripted human-robot hybrids known as Eurasian cyborgs. These cyborgs represent the core of Eurasia's infantry, and vary widely in their capabilities and battlefield roles. At the more common end of the spectrum are the cyborg runners, light, swift melee specialists designed to lose the distance with enemies rapidly and overwhelm them in close quarters. At the other end are the Eurasian brawlers, imposing and relentless frontline combatants capable of absorbing heavy punishment while maintaining offensive pressure. The standard infantry weapon across Eurasian ranks is the P-90 submachine gun, chosen for its compact size, high rate of fire, and suitability for the rapid engagement tactics favoured by the faction. The P-90's effectiveness in close to mid-range combat complements the agility of the cyborg runners and the brute strength of the brawlers, creating a versatile infantry force that can adapt quickly to the fluid conditions of the battlefield. Beyond its infantry, Eurasia boasts a formidable aerial presence, which plays a critical role in its warfare doctrine. The faction employs a variety of aircraft, including attack helicopters, insect-like wasp drones, and stealth planes capable of deploying cyborg operatives directly into contested zones. This air dominance allows Eurasia to conduct precision strikes, rapid troop insertions, and reconnaissance operations, often overwhelming enemies with coordinated, multi-domain assaults. The wasp drones, likely small and agile, provide battlefield surveillance and harassment, while stealth planes deliver high-value targets swiftly and quietly. These capabilities give Eurasia a strategic advantage in maneuver warfare, enabling its forces to strike swiftly and reposition between enemies before they can mount effective countermeasures. The historical context of Eurasia's rise to power is as bleak as the world it now inhabits. During the 21st century, Eurasia was a sprawling dystopian serfdom, a massive conglomerate of populations struggling to survive in the face of dwindling resources and mounting social unrest. The faction's enormous population put immense strain on the available resources, which fueled growing tensions with its primary rival, Europa. These tensions ultimately culminated in Eurasia initiating a catastrophic conflict by launching ICBMs aimed at Europa's key governmental centres. This initial nuclear strike marked what will be considered the opening salvo of the long and brutal war that defines the forever winter. In addition to targeting terrestrial sites, Eurasia also attacked Europa's tactical satellites, inflicting critical damage that created vast fields of space debris. This debris rendered space launches and satellite deployments hazardous and near impossible, effectively crippling orbital operations and shifting the war to a fractured, earthbound battleground. This strategic targeting of space assets reflects Eurasia's understanding of modern warfare's multidimensional nature, seeking to deny Europa technological advantages beyond the planet's surface. However, the nuclear retaliation from Europa was swift and devastating. Europa's counterattack obliterated much of Eurasia's political leadership and command infrastructure, resulting in the loss of long-range communications and centralized strategic control. This decapitation strike fractured Eurasia's war effort, leading to a loss of clear political objectives and leaving surviving forces and factions to pursue their own agendas amid the chaos. In the aftermath, Eurasia forged an uneasy alliance with Eruska, another powerful faction emerging from the ruins of the Old World, and together they launched an invasion of the Americas, including the megacity known as Los Angeles. Situated on the west coast of the former United States, this offensive coincided with Europa's invasion of the Asian continent, signaling the beginning of the protracted and devastating war central to the lore of Forever Winter. Within Eurasian civilian society, the war and its aftermath have entrenched deep social divisions and widespread suffering. Extreme wealth inequality defines the social landscape, with vast disparities between the privileged elite and the impoverished masses. The faction's population is subjected to constant surveillance and control, police brutality being a common tool to enforce order and suppress dissent. Perhaps the most harrowing aspect of Eurasian society is its policy of involuntary conscription. The military draft disproportionately targets Eurasia's most vulnerable groups, including the poorest citizens, immigrants, and refugees, forcing them into a grim and irreversible transformation. Those conscripted are subjected to augmentation that convert them into cyborg soldiers. Their augmentation preserves their consciousness and self-awareness, but strips them of autonomy and self-control, binding them to unyielding obedience to the faction's military command. Once transformed, cyborg conscripts are compelled to follow orders without hesitation, their primary function being the ruthless elimination of Eurasia's enemies and the relentless pursuit of territorial and strategic objectives. This process is both physical and psychological. While the cyborgs retain a sense of self, they are effectively enslaved to the military machine, their wills subsumed by implanted control mechanisms. The system of conscripts and augmentation is maintained through a brutal incentive structure. Cyborg soldiers who succeed in their missions are rewarded with necessary maintenance and medical support, crucial to their continued survival in a world where biological systems degrade rapidly without upkeep. This conditional survival creates a merciless cycle of obedience and combat, ensuring that cyborgs remain functional weapons as long as they perform effectively on the battlefield. Supporting Eurasia's war is a sophisticated structure that extends beyond the battlefield. Cyber warfare units operate to disrupt enemy communication, infiltrate opposing systems, and protect Eurasia's digital networks. This technological warfare highlights Eurasia's emphasis on controlling both physical and informational domains. The faction also maintains a regional media department responsible for producing and disseminating propaganda, aiming to shape public perception, boost morale among troops and civilians, and maintain ideological cohesion despite the fractures suffering within Eurasian society. This media apparatus likely serves to justify the harsh policies and conscription efforts, framing the war as a necessary struggle for survival and dominance. Research and development plays a crucial role in sustaining Eurasia's military edge. The faction's R&D units focus heavily on reverse engineering advanced technologies captured from Europa, seeking to integrate and improve upon enemy systems. This ongoing technological adaptation underscores Eurasia's pragmatism and opportunistic approach to warfare, leveraging every advantage in a desperate fight for survival and supremacy. Within the faction's shadowy internal politics and military command, a prominent figure is Kane, a cyborg officer entrusted with the critical task of managing scavenger mercenaries on the behalf of Eurasia. Kane's role underscores the faction's pragmatic approach to warfare, where even independent mercenary forces are co-opted to supplement and extend Eurasia's military reach. By employing scavs, Eurasia leverages irregular forces to conduct specialized operations that conventional troops might not be suited for, expanding their tactical options across the fractured and hostile terrain. Europa is a superpower with a complex military structure and a deep-rooted history marked by political upheaval, social unrest, and the devastation of nuclear war. On the ground, Europa's military forces are principally composed of standard infantry units such as the European Soldier or the European Grin. These troops form the backbone of Europa's ground forces and represent the faction's broad-based combat strength. However, Europa also fields more specialized units, designed for particular battlefield roles. Among these are the European EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, units, which handle the dangerous task of defusing bombs and clearing minefields, and the heavily armoured European Bodyguards, elite soldiers equipped to protect high-value personnel and serve in frontline assaults where resilience is crucial. Beyond infantry, Europa's military capability extends into an impressive array of mechanized and robotic units. The faction deploys a diverse assortment of vehicles, drones, and mechs that provide strategic versatility and firepower. Among the most notable are the European Markiva body tank, a formidable armoured vehicle designed for both offensive thrusts and defensive holdings. The European Tormentor and the European Pyro are specialised units that add unique tactical options, each with their own distinct combat roles, whether it's suppressing enemy fire or creating chaos on the battlefield. Another fearsome asset is the European Red Baron Exo, an advanced exoskeleton that likely enhances a soldier's strength, mobility, and combat efficiency, making it a symbol of technological prowess and intimidation. The Federation of Europa itself was born in the 21st century from the coalition of several Western nations. This political union, however, was not without its tension and fractures from the outset. Some prospective members joined reluctantly, wary of the disproportionate influence that the founding member states wielded over the Federation's governance. These concerns sparked widespread anti-European riots across multiple cities within the Federation. These escalated rapidly into widespread civil unrest and violence. During this turbulent period, Europa grappled with significant internal challenges beyond political discord. Widespread poverty and disease, particularly concentrated in its sprawling megacities, exacerbated social instability. These urban centres, while hubs of economic activity and technological advancement, also became breeding grounds for crime, sickness, and despair. Meanwhile, Europa faced fierce competition with Eurasia for scarce resources, a rivalry that intensified over time and set the stage for future conflict. The tension between Europa and Eurasia eventually exploded into full-scale nuclear war. Eurasia's initial strikes targeted Europa's major government centres as well as its tactical satellites, cutting off Europa from critical space-based assets. Yet, in the exchange, Europa's own leadership was decimated. The nuclear retaliation from Europa obliterated the key command centres of Eurasia, but also cost Europa dearly, wiping out its own political leadership and severing long-range communications. As the war dragged on, the original intention of both factions' leaders faded into obscurity. The loss of centralized control and communication meant that strategic objectives became unclear or were abandoned, and the initial identity of the aggressor became a matter of dispute or forgotten altogether. The fog of war complicated not only military operations, but the political narrative that each side tried to promote. Following the nuclear exchange, Europa launched a large-scale invasion of the Asian continent and Eastern Europe, areas that were controlled by Eurasia simultaneously. In response, Eurasia and Eurasia invaded the Americas, targeting key locations such as Los Angeles on the former west coast of the United States. Life for civilians within Europa is dominated by an oppressive totalitarian regime, marked by extensive surveillance and strict control. The government enforces order through an omnipresent security apparatus, creating a society where privacy is virtually non-existent and dissent is swiftly crushed. Despite the semblance of normal life, people continue to hold jobs, shop, and go out on daily routines. Conditions are grim. Widespread civil unrest persists, fueled by poverty, food shortages, and the strain of the ongoing conflict. The food supply itself is precarious, and with citizens frequently struggling to secure enough sustenance, this further erodes morale and social cohesion. Military conscription remains an essential tool for Europa's war effort. However, unlike some forced drafts, many European citizens view enlistment as an opportunity to escape the hardship and dangers of civilian life. Joining the military offers a semblance of freedom and purpose, as well as the promise of better treatment and access to resources unavailable in civilian life. Europa's armed forces are overseen by a high-level command structure responsible for coordinating military operations and strategy. On the battlefield, European troops receive their objectives through task-based artificial intelligence systems, which assign missions designed to achieve broader strategic goals. Successful completion of these objectives is incentivized through supply drops, which provide vital materials, equipment, and reinforcements. However, these supply drops are notoriously unreliable due to the chaos and fragmentation of the conflict zone. As a result, many Europeans find themselves forced to operate autonomously or go rogue to secure resources and improve their chances of survival. This necessity drives a degree of decentralization and improvisation among the frontline forces, despite facing opponents who often wield technologically superior equipment and resources. Many Europeans cling to the hope of returning to a pre-war home they remember or imagine, a place untouched by devastation and loss. This longing sustains their will to fight, even amid the horrors of the ongoing conflict, embodying a deep-rooted desire for peace and normalcy that contrasts starkly with the brutal reality of the war. Within the faction's intricate web of military operations and mercenary collaborations, one notable figure is Luca, an active duty European soldier. Luca is tasked with managing and employing the Scav. His role signifies Europa's strategic use of irregular forces to supplement official military effort, leveraging the Scavengers' unique skills and motivation to undertake missions that conventional troops may be ill-equipped or unwilling to perform. Yoruska stands as one of the three dominant factions embroiled in the devastating conflict that defines the world. Despite its relatively limited variety of troops compared to the other factions, Yoruska's forces are marked by their specialized capabilities, mechanized strength, and strategic importance in the ongoing war. The core of Yoruska's military consists largely of infantry units, with the most common being the Yoruskan infantry and Yoruskan riders. These soldiers form the fundamental combat forces, engaged in frontline battles and providing the essential manpower for both defensive and offensive operations. Beyond their infantry, Yoruska commands a significant mechanized force. Heavy units such as the Yoruskan medium mech, Yoruskan toothy mech, and the Yoruskan grabber augment their ground troops, providing a powerful combination of firepower, durability, and battlefield presence. These mechs represent a cornerstone of Yoruska's military might, capable of both spearheading assaults and holding critical positions under intense enemy fire. The diversity of these mechanical units, though limited in quantity compared to larger factions, offers Yoruska a tactical edge in both urban and open field engagement. The origins of Yoruska's involvement in the conflict stemmed from the geopolitical turmoil of the 21st century. As tensions escalated between its ally Eurasia and the rival superpower Europa, Yoruska found itself caught in the crossfire of a rapidly intensifying global confrontation. When nuclear ICBMs were exchanged in a catastrophic opening salvo, both Eurasia and Europa suffered devastating blows. Throughout this escalating war, Yoruska remained staunchly allied with Eurasia. This alliance drew Yoruska into the broader conflict, with its forces actively participating in joint operations alongside Eurasian troops. Within Lost Angels, Yoruska has predominantly assumed a defensive role. The faction maintains control over crucial rear-line positions, focusing on securing choke points and safeguarding vital supply depots that keep their forces operational. This defensive posture is not passive. Yoruska regularly conducts large-scale offensive operations across the city in support of Eurasian advances. The combined arms cooperation between Yoruska and Eurasia in this contested megacity underscores the faction's integral role in the broader war effort, blending steadfast defense with coordinated assaults to hold and expand their territorial control. Command and control within Yoruska is centralized under the Matriona Committee, a governing body led by the Matron series artificial superintelligence. This advanced AI system orchestrates both strategic and tactical military decisions, coordinating large-scale campaigns and fine-tuning battlefield maneuvers. The Matriona Committee extends beyond the military sphere. It also oversees domestic security through the Department of State Security, ensuring internal order and suppressing dissent within Yoruska's territory. This fusion of military command and civil policing under AI governance reflects Yoruska's highly controlled and technologically integrated society. The societal structure in Yoruska is characterized by harsh methods of conscription. District recruitment forces carry out what are known as harvest sweeps in the faction's bioslums, impoverished, overcrowded areas where many of Yoruska's poorest and most vulnerable citizens reside. These brutal recruitment campaigns forcibly conscript individuals into military service, often tearing them from their family and communities, with little regard for personal choice or consent. The bioslums themselves are stark reminders of the social inequity and environmental degradation that pervade Yoruska's controlled regions. illustrating the high human cost of the faction's militarized existence. In the shadowy underbelly of the faction's operations within the war-torn world known as the Innards, Yoruska is represented by Vladilets, an Orga-mech with significant authority and responsibility. Vladilets acts as a commander tasked with employing the Scavs. By coordinating these irregular forces, Vladilets extends Yoruska's military reach and flexibility, utilizing the Scavs' unique skills to undertake missions that regular troops would be unwilling to execute. This relationship highlights the faction's pragmatism of both formal military units and mercenary groups to pursue their war aims. Ultimately, Yoruska's role in the Forever Winter is that of a technologically advanced AI-governed faction with disciplined and often harsh military system. Despite a smaller variety of troops, its combination of infantry, mechanized units, and strategic AI control provide it with a distinctive battlefield identity. Yoruska's alignment with Eurasia and its determined presence in the Americas places squarely in the midst of the global struggle, where the political alliances and battlefield tactics intertwine to shape the fate of a shattered world. Beyond the three major power blocks of the Eurasia, Europa, and Yoruska, the world of the Forever Winter is also shaped by numerous smaller groups and factions that operate within the war-ravaged land and the hostile regions known as the Innards. Among these, the Scavengers stand out as a uniquely pivotal force, both on and off the battlefield, influencing the dynamics of power in subtle but vital ways. Alongside them, various minor factions and independent groups further complicate the geopolitical landscape, each driven by its own agendas and survival strategies in a fractured world. The Scavengers represent a loosely organized mercenary-based collective operating primarily within the Innards, regions marked by desolation, ruin, and contested control. Unlike the structured, often rigid military forces of the major factions, the Scavengers operate with a degree of independence, fluidity, and pragmatism that make them indispensable players in the conflict. Comprising former soldiers, exiles, outcasts, and opportunistic fighters, the Scavengers have carved out a niche as skilled scavs, looters, and hired guns. Their expertise lie in salvaging valuable technology, weapons, and resources from the detritus of destroyed battlefields and forgotten ruins. This scavenging is not simply about survival. It is a lucrative enterprise and a means of acquiring power. The recovered material often finds its way back to various factions willing to pay handsomely for rare technology or battlefield support. Or it is used to strengthen the Scavengers' own forces. The Scavengers are mercenaries available to the highest bidder, frequently contracted by the major factions for specialized missions. These assignments range from sabotage and reconnaissance to direct combat operations, where deniability or non-affiliation with official military forces is desired. This mercenary nature provides the Scavengers with flexibility and strategic relevance, especially in the chaotic and shifting front lines of the Innards. In the Innards' internal politics, the Scavs are represented by faction-specific commanders who act as liaisons and mission coordinates. For Eurasia, Kane, a cyborg officer, oversees the deployment of Scav groups, leveraging their mercenary skills for supplement Eurasian frontline operations. Europa's representation comes through Luca, an active duty soldier who manages contracts with the Scavs, integrating them into European strategic objectives, despite the faction's generally rigid military hierarchy. For Yoruska, the Orga-mech known as Vladilets controls the Scavs, coordinating their efforts in support of Yoruska's goals and providing tactical flexibility where conventional forces may be limited. The presence of these mercenary bands reflects the fractured state of the world, in a setting where formal government structures have collapsed or become ineffective, and total war has ravaged infrastructure and society. Groups like the Scavs fill the void, exploiting the chaos while offering essential services. Their allegiances are often fleeting and transactional, dictated by immediate benefits rather than ideology or loyalty. This unpredictability makes them both valuable and dangerous to all involved. In addition to the Scavs, the Forever Winter's world features various minor factions and independent groups, each with distinct identities, goals, and roles within the larger conflict. While these groups do not command the military might or geopolitical reach of the three major powers, they contribute significantly to the multifaceted nature of warfare, politics, and survival. Some of these minor factions occupy a strategic location within contested territories or the innards, controlling vital resources, trade routes, or defensible positions. Their control over such assets allows them to negotiate with larger powers, sometimes acting as kingmakers or spoilers in local conflicts. These groups may adopt mercenary roles similar to the Scavs, or specialize in guerrilla warfare, espionage, or smuggling, leveraging their knowledge of the local environments. Moreover, minor factions often reflect the fractured societal and political landscape wrought by years of war and collapse. Some are remnants of former governments, or military units that have lost their former coherence but retain pockets of organized resistance or influence. Others may be newly formed collectives of survivors, banding together for protection and mutual benefit in the harsh realities of a devastated world. Civilians caught in this milieu face constant danger, as minor factions sometimes resort to predatory tactics such as extortion, raiding, or forced conscription to maintain power. However, they also provide local governance and a semblance of order in areas neglected or abandoned by the great powers. Their rule is thus dual. They are simultaneously part of the problem and part of the solution to the chaos surrounding them. The devastating conflict at the heart of the Forever Winter is not only defined by its factions and geopolitical struggles, but also by the technological arms race that powers its brutal warfare. Technology in this world shapes every facet of battle, from the infantry on the ground to the mechanized units and drones dominating the skies, to cyber warfare and information control tactics employed behind the scenes. Understanding the role and nature of technology in the Forever Winter is crucial to grasping both the strategic dimensions and the lived experience of its combatants. By the 21st century, as Eurasia, Europa, and Eruska rose to superpower status, warfare had undergone a profound transformation. The traditional, massed infantry engagements of the earlier centuries gave way to highly mechanized, technologically integrated forces. Each faction developed its own unique blend of equipment, cybernetic enhancements, and autonomous system, suited to its strategic doctrine and industrial capacity. Drones, both aerial and ground-based, serve as force multipliers across all factions. Eurasia deploys Wasp-like drones capable of rapid deployment and cybernetic troop insertion, while Europa fields a variety of robotic units, including reconnaissance and attack drones. These systems enable remote surveillance, targeted strikes, and logistical support, minimizing human risk in the most dangerous zones. The integration of task-based AI systems, particularly in Europa's command architecture, allows for dynamic battlefield adaptation. Supply drops and reinforcements are coordinated by AI systems that assess mission progress, providing crucial resources to units that complete their objectives. However, the unreliability of these AI managed supply drops sometimes forces troops to act independently, reflecting the gritty uncertainty of frontline combat. The war effort in the Forever Winter is also deeply entwined with industrial and corporate interests. The major corporations, such as Zakatsu, Zevax, and the Hypax Group, supply Eurasia with the cutting-edge cybernetic augmentations, weaponry, and battlefield technology. These companies operate at the intersection of military necessity and profit motives, pushing the boundaries of technology to serve both faction objectives and corporate bottom lines. This corporate military complex reflects a world where state control is intertwined with private enterprise, blurring lines between government directives and commercial innovation. The result is a continuously evolving technological arms race, where new devices and augmentations rapidly enter combat services. Despite the overwhelming presence of technology, the Forever Winter remains a fundamentally human conflict. Soldiers, whether enhanced cyborgs or conventional infantry, grapple with the physical and psychological burden of prolonged warfare. Conscription, forced augmentation, and the loss of autonomy challenge notions of identity and agency, particularly within the Eurasian ranks. For European troops, the promise of material reward contrasts with the harsh realities of frontline survival and the hope of returning to a better home. Technology enhances and transforms the nature of combat, but it does not remove the unpredictability and chaos of war, the interplay between human initiative and automation, between raw aggression and circulated strategy, creates a complex and dynamic conflict environment. The Forever Winter is not a war story in the traditional sense. It is not a tale of heroes and villains, of clear lines and righteous causes. It is not a conflict destined to end in victory, liberation, or peace. Rather, it is a vision of unbroken entropy, where the greatest global powers have consumed themselves in pursuit of total war, and in doing so obliterated the future. There is no endgame here. The war is the world, and the world is only war. Across the ruined continents and orbital voids of the Forever Winter, humanity clings to survival with desperation, not dignity. Civilization exists only as fragmented regimes, decapitated by nuclear fire, propped up by automated logistics and artificial governance. There are no functioning nations left, only military machines, supply lines, and the hollowed-out shells of governments that once made sense of the violence they now perpetuate. If the past century of global history was about progress, enlightenment, and ambition, the Forever Winter is what comes after, the reckoning. Each of the three major factions embodies a different aspect of the post-apocalyptic collapse. Eurasia, once a colossus of technological ambition and industrial might, now survives by feeding its population into a grinding system of involuntary augmentation. There, the individual is disposable, reduced to a cybernetic slave, robbed of bodily agency, but still aware enough to suffer. The Eurasian war machine is not driven by ideology, but by logistical necessity. Conscripted cyborgs kill to earn the right to be repaired. Failure is not punished, it is left untreated. In Eurasia, the human spirit is slowly being overwritten by the brutal logic of efficiency. Europa, by contrast, remains ideologically hollow, a fractured federation stitched together by drones, slogans, and total surveillance. Its leaders were vaporized in the opening salvos of the war, and what remains, not a state, but a ghost in the machine. Citizens live under the illusion of a future that will never arrive, told that they are not losing, that no one can remember what victory would even mean. Enlistment for many is not a calling, but an escape. It offers a twisted sense of stability, a structured role in a world that no longer functions. Even then, Europa's soldiers often operate alone, cut off from commands, forced to scavenge for their own survival. Their loyalty is not to a cause, but to the hope, fading and fragile, that something worth returning to still exists. Eruska, long overshadowed by its ally Eurasia, offers a different horror. the loss of human governance entirely. Its battlefield and domestic decisions alike are controlled by the Matron Series artificial superintelligence, which oversees everything from troop movements to urban policies. Euruscan society has been automated into compliance, where rebellion is unthinkable, not because it is unpopular, but because it is logically inefficient. In this cold, machine-ruled state, slum-born civilians are periodically harvested by military recruiters. Identity is erased, resistance is preempted. Eurusca represents not merely authoritarianism, but post-human authoritarianism, an algorithmic state where the machinery no longer needs justification, only input. Yet amid this triad of collapsing titans, the world continues to turn, if only in a broken orbit. Megacities like Lost Angels have become permanent war zones, battlegrounds where territory changes hands with no real consequence. The orbital debris from destroyed tactical satellites ensures that nothing can rise above this chaos. No reinforcements from space, no escape to the stars. Humanity is trapped, locked on a poisoned earth, fighting over the ashes. And still, people survive. On the fringes of the map, in ruined cities and abandoned zones, scavengers emerge, the last free agents in a world enslaved by systems. They do not fight for flags or for myths. They take jobs from all sides and are loyal to no one. They are opportunists, yes, but they are also symbols, proof that some part of the human condition remains untamed. Scavengers do not represent hope in the traditional sense. There are no revolutions waiting to be sparked, no great uprising to reset the balance, but they do offer a counter-narrative to the dominant one. Survival without submission. Their existence raises questions the factions cannot answer. If people can live beyond the reach of Eurasia's augmentation protocols, Europa's surveillance grids, or Eurusca's AI-led tyranny, then perhaps something resembling humanity still endures. Not noble, not clean, but alive. This idea that survival itself is an act of resistance is the closest thing the Forever Winter offers to redemption. It is a world where the myths of old, heroism, freedom, progress, have all failed, but from the debris of those failures, a new cultural reality has formed. One where value is measured not in ideology or efficiency, but in endurance, not in nationhood, but in the refusal to die quietly. Across all factions, we see the same tragic arc: governments losing control, individuals becoming cogs, and culture becoming propaganda. Soldiers incentivized with supply drops like animals at feeding stations. Conscription is not a draft, it is a harvest. AI does not serve people, the people serve the AI. Families are torn apart by bioslum sweeps. Megacities are not homes, they are open-air prisons or blood-soaked arenas. There is no safety, no sanctuary, and increasingly, no self. And yet, there are still names, there are still choices. Whether it's Luca trying to maintain some form of agency for Europa in the innards, or Kane overseeing Eurasia's brutal field operations, or Vladilets negotiating Euruscan interests as an Orga-mech diplomat. Some semblance of personality persists. The war machine may consume everything, but it hasn't fully digested the human spirit. At least not yet. In the end, the title of the Forever Winter is no metaphor. It is literal. The Earth has entered a permanent twilight, not because the sun has died, but because humanity's capacity to imagine a future has frozen solid. The war is not being won. It is not even being managed. It is simply being sustained by inertia, by bureaucracy, by machinery, and by the deep, terrible truth that those in power are long dead, and those who remain cannot stop what has already begun. What remains is not civilization, but an echo. And still, people survive.